If you're in the ego, you are split, fragmented internally, and in a war with yourself. And that internal war is projected out into the world. And therefore, if you are in ego consciousness, if you are duping yourself, if you're not self-realized, you are going to project that you are in a world that is causing your suffering. A world that has brought you unhappiness and continues to bring you unhappiness. And you're duped because you don't recognize that this is your dream. It's not the actual world that causes any unhappiness, or the situation that you are in the world, or the situation you are in terms of the state of the body. The ego is suffering because it is projecting its own shadow. So the problem with the ego, and the reason it's not in a state of joy, is that joy comes from love. It's love that produces joy, and the ego has no love. And so the ego will tend to project that it's in a world that has no love. And wherever it goes, it will criticize that place and those people for not being loving enough, without recognizing that it's his own lack of love that is causing that projection to take hold, and that it will haunt one wherever one goes. Because it's not something external. It's a lack of love in your own heart, for yourself, for the world, for the self, for God, who is the source of love, because you're cut off from that. And because you're cut off from that, the ego is in a state of paranoia, not metanoia, which it would be in if it was in love of God. So the ego, being loveless, projects a world that lacks beauty, because love also triggers the realization of how beautiful it all is. The ego can't see it. The ego can only critique it and wish it was more beautiful. They look in the mirror and they criticize their own body. They criticize others. They criticize whatever, because criticism becomes the fuel of the ego. It lives on anger and sadness and wishing things were different. It feeds its world weariness and nihilistic tendencies with its projection of its own darkness into the world. And so this is the problem of why there is no joy in Mudville, you know, in the ninth inning in the world, if you remember that old poem. So our job, and the job of why people should be living in an ashram, is to stop duping yourself. I hope everyone here is no longer duping yourself. Because otherwise, you won't be happy. Okay, second shloka. I'll read more quickly now because he goes through simply a cascade of similar revelations. As I alone reveal this body, even so do I reveal this world. Why? Because it's my dream, so therefore I am the one who reveals it to myself. Therefore, mine is all of this world, or verily nothing is mine. Nothing, because there actually is no world. It's only your projection. It's only a reflection of the shadow of the ego. If you're seeing through the ego, and if you're in self-realized consciousness, you're seeing the infinite beauty of the God self in its explicate order from your place in the implicate order, and the non-duality of both is realized. So you are everything and nothing, and you have everything and nothing. And then he says, Aho, having renounced the world, together with the body, I now perceive the Supreme Self through the secret of wisdom. Okay? So what's the secret of wisdom? It is the renunciation of the identity with the body and its operating system. That's the secret, but it's an open secret. It's constantly told and somehow never internalized, or rarely. Then he goes on to explain how that is. As the waves and the foam and the bubbles are not different from the ocean, all is water, so the universe emanating from the self is not different from it. The world and the self are one. And then number 5, just as cloth, when analyzed, is found to be nothing but thread, so this universe, when analyzed, is nothing but consciousness, the self. Just as sugar generated in sugarcane juice is wholly pervaded by that juice, so the universe produced in me, in the self, by the self, is permeated by the self through and through. So if there is sweetness in the self, one will perceive sweetness in the world. If there's bitterness in the subjectivity, then the world will produce that bitterness. Number 7, the world appears from the ignorance of the self, and it disappears with the knowledge of the self. Just as a snake appears from the non-cognition of the rope that it really is, and it disappears with the recognition that there's no snake, only a rope. So when you realize there never was an ego, there's only the self. Even if the self is duping itself, it's still nothing but the self. And the self likes to play hide and seek with itself, but it never stops being the self. And when the self is realized, there's no world, because there never was. Number 8, he says, light is my very nature. I am no other than light. When the world manifests itself, verily then it is I that shine. So in the East, they generally speak of God as light. In the West, it's more God as love. But the two are not really different, because the light of pure consciousness that creates the illusion of the world does it out of love. It creates a world of beauty if you see it as the divine light that all of this really is. If you understand that this world is made of the light and the intelligence of God, and it's perfect just as it is, and you are not the mere character who is perceiving it from within it, but you are also beyond it. And then in the 9th note, he says, Aho, the universe appears in me, conceived through ignorance, just as silver seems to appear in the mother of pearl, or a snake in the rope, or water in the sunbeam, the mirage, right? So he's basically repeating this. It's just an error, an optical illusion. And just as a jug dissolves into clay, it's made of clay, it'll break into clay. And a wave dissolves into water. A bracelet is only gold. So the universe which has emanated from me will dissolve back into me. Right? So if you think of the world as your dream, and it's your dream within a dream, because each node of consciousness has its private dream within a common dream. And the common dream is mostly the shared quantum wave functions collapsed in a certain way. But the subjectivity, the private dream, is the qualium waves that create the sanskaras that cause you to see something with a particular attitude toward it, that creates an illusion that is personal to that node of consciousness. But all of it is the same light. And then in number 11, he says, wonderful. It's still aho, but now it's translated as wonderful. But it's aho aham, right? Wonderful am I, if you want to do that. But it means, how great I am, right? I adore myself. This is not narcissism. You have to understand that. It sort of seems like it, but and they don't even capitalize self here, but they should. Adoration to the God self, who knows no decay and survives, I would say, is even after the destruction of the world, and is beyond Brahma and down, including to be a clump of grass or anything that appears. So the entire dream of the cosmos is in your mind. And all the end of time is that moment when you withdraw your attention from the dream. And poof, the dream is no more. It never was. And all there is the awakened light of consciousness in its pure potentiality again. And that's the moment we're heading toward, the omega point that is the alpha point of a new creation.